Hello, the morning. I am having diverse experiences now, sharing. I'm sitting here in some sunlight. Today is called 12 Lizard sometimes by ancient Mayans, if I understand right. There is a sense of bundling, being gathered, connected with our creative energy and what is it? Not chronos, but kairos timing, which seems to be more and more connected to chronos timing, so, you know. There are some fun things you might like to explore to be found at meganelizabethmorris.media. I'm feeling very conscious of MaxMoRadio being the place where I express myself more freely and less appropriately, which is deeply healthy. And navigating all of those spaces is really, really interesting. It's so important to remember to breathe. Inside my body there is a shining golden tree, and its roots grow very, very deep in the earth of me. And the leaves extend, nay, her leaves are extending constantly as part of me, exosomally, in a great cloud of that which living being resonates with my signature frequencies. My grandmothers were jaguars, and I am likewise so. The jaguar has been a part of my family history and intermittent contact with profound meaning through whatever lifetimes we want to count, considering all of this repeated dying. And the jaguar earthness of the planet is a relevant subject of conversation. So when we realize in our intuitive listening that that mother jaguar voice is speaking, where we are most effectively interconnecting to the soil from which we all emerged, anciently and cellular experiencing oriented always. Have I mentioned intuitive.community/channel/poetry? So my mother's mother was a jaguar in the ancient Mayan calendar, the Zolkin Daily Energy Almanac. My father's mother made a needlepoint jaguar that has been hanging on some wall since I've been alive. The jaguar I painted on land sacred to jaguars, and the significance it seems to have. Represented for me at so many different points in its and my journey. And learning more and more about what that sacred creative earth means to me. And that I can find its reference points in my matrilineal family tree. And there we've circled back again. I want to sit down with my back up against that tree and breathe. Do you sometimes sing when you drink your tea? All the sacred things you think in your mind of minds, you could share with me in community. A microphone has stopped working, which is not an unusual occurrence, but I'm about out of half-broken technology to sacrifice to the gods of mercurial whimsy. Do. All right, what are we gonna do? I gotta record a great interview, and I cannot vouch for my ability to do so without a microphone being functional. What's this? Okay, Zoom. Well, we'll just see then, won't we? I love technology, and technology loves me. Let's see. I love technology, and technology loves me. New meeting. Let's get this microphone working. really hot tea. Okay, so Zoom recognizes that microphone just fine. So what's up, QuickTime? Do 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 do. I have 2 Facebook profiles now because one of them seems to be more severely disabled than it used to be, or than the new one turns out to be, in certain ways that are sort of interesting, but challenging to detail completely. Okay, QuickTime, you can do it. There it is. I had to unplug it and plug it back in again. That is a solution of renown. Okay. Half functional camera tripod. Squeaky bench. I'm a mocker, I'm a mensch. We wonder now what happened then. Da-da-dum-dum. Dum-dum-dum-dum-da. I'm sort of warming up my conversational brain. That's something that's happening. I'm excited for our planned conversations today. I'm talking to individuals I feel strengthened and inspired by. That's wild. The technology is basically functional. That's magical. Especially when you see it stitched together with Scotch tape and twine. Yeah, we're not quite there, are we? Yeah. Something like that. I mean, who knows where it's at, 440, for whatever. Well, it is the result of a slipshotty tuning, and so on and so forth. I think better, definitely better. Do you ever think about tuning? How we tune ourselves, how we tune to ourselves and one another. How we tune to ourselves and one another. How we tune to ourselves and one another. One another. Tune, 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 tune. Tune, 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 tune. And it never goes right back to where it was before because everything is always changing. Oh, jeez. What was I saying before? I was saying that I have 2 Facebook pages because we are learning more and more about the ways in which Facebook disables already severely disabled communities. And both of my Facebook pages display in the heading that aforementioned jaguar painting of such great renown and history. And it's pretty. And it's a reminder of the depth and function of living beauty that is grounding and earth energy and utterly deifically planetary. We have various projects partly finished, where finishing is so utterly life-saving and prevents so much suffering and stops currently ongoing suffering that is unbearable for all participants and all those witnessing. How much have you really tuned in to pay attention to your breathing? Breathing is really important to me. How mindfully I can breathe is inherently related to how clearly I can receive the signals of the body and transceive our communications more accurately entirely. But sometimes I have forgotten to breathe. Do you know what I mean? We built a radio to remind us, apparently. The way this Frankensteinian broadcasting contraption is set up now is astonishing. I use that word quite frequently, and it's amazing that it's working, but I'm also aware, very, very aware, that all it takes is the final death throes of one small piece of this complex technological ecology for me to suddenly not have a long list of functions we haven't even gotten to detail completely. We should tell you more about that, huh? That's cool. For me, this is not just about radio broadcasting. This rig is part of my cyborg disability aid body. It is connected to my physical survival in major, major ways, so much so that if it stops working, I am in trouble. Which is why I'm inviting you, you guessed it, to browse to the following website and take a look at some of these listed options we've presented according to the need for intuitive.community/donations. It is really possible that every single person who has supported us financially has themselves been a survivor of severe circumstances and severe disabilities. People who are barely able to move for their agony, people who cannot do all kinds of things that are often taken for granted. People who are profoundly, continuously suffering offer a few dollars, and what that means to them is it's a massive thing. They go without food, they go without medical supplies, they go without safety, and they offer us a few dollars, which I strive to turn down, because survivors of severity should not be the ones funding this thing, being that it is so profoundly beneficial to all those who may not even know what survivor of severity means. But it's been a weird journey explaining or demonstrating the various benefits and utilities of using systems like these, intuitive resources developed by survivor-led enterprise. Whatever a survivor feels most at their core must occur, must manifest in the world so that our safety and resilience and recovery can be effectively achieved. These are deep, vast projects that can be supported in the community if we recognize them, if we know what they look like and sound like and seem like and how they communicate, which has been the problem until more recently in history. We are having these discussions in many different places, in many different ways, using many different languages, maybe 10 of them being English, at least, and every other language and dialect. And we have to consider languages outside of only country and ethnicity, but also lived experience and the many ways that living beings are being traumatized presently, which changes physically the language materials of the brain. Languaging. Check out t.me/s/intuitive social language. And there might be a page at intuitive.social/language. I don't know. There have been too many physical changes to the material language centers of my brain. What did I say? So when we're learning to interpret new kinds of languages together, creative languages, languages of trauma, and languages of the recovery of creative resilience, it's so helpful to have safe spaces in which one can learn to speak, practice speaking those languages with a feeling of fluency. Whatever fluency happens to mean, I wouldn't rush to define it if I were you, but a feeling of flowing, of being in contact with the resonance, the spirit of the language, with deep respect for it and the people whose language it most deeply is. So for me, the jaguar is a tree and the tree is a jaguar, and this means something far-reaching for the planet, for the cosmos, for the people I'm a part of, for my community and my family. And for me, interconnected with all of those things. This kind of embodied wisdom in practice is only achievable and recoverable through deepest respect for languages, what the survival of a language means. We have talked a lot about the survival of the Welsh language. There are other languages we wish to be sustained and nourished so that their cultures survive with them. And we also recognize where everywhere around us, through trauma and by every other pathway, new languages and new cultures are emergent. being expressed authentically from the matter that through changing demonstrates what for those living beings means thriving. And so always, every cell, we are all opened up singing, even if we think we are silent. With all those languages emerging and all of that deep, personal, unique cultural experiencing, the ways we go about respecting one another's languages and languaging is a wondrous thing. This, of course, is about much more than just human beings. What cells are singing? Hey there, this is Megan Elizabeth Morris with Intuitive Public Media, broadcasting over the many platforms of Intuitive Public Radio. I'd like you to know about our production queue, which you can help us advance more swiftly and efficiently by supporting us with some dollars or with your voices in raising. If you would like to speak your support for survivors of severity and the many survivor-led projects that are part of this intuitive community, please navigate to intuitive.pub/support and read some instructions and reach out to me if you would like a hand with anything. max@intuitive.pub is my email address. If you do happen to have a few dollars to share and you are not yourself in extreme distress, we would really appreciate financial contributions to the following address: intuitive.community/donations is a really good place to look if you're curious about the varied options we have for financial contributions. One place you might consider to put a recurring number of dollars would be patreon.com/intuitivepr. And of course, patreon.com/MaxMoRadio. I currently do not have shoes or clothes that I can wear without tying them onto my body with string. I do not have any income stream. Donations have not been received except in the smallest amounts from survivors of horrific extremity who cannot afford to share those dollars with me. And accessing safe food that my body can digest successfully is a daily, life-threatening challenge. This can be resolved beautifully with any kind of reliable income stream. And we have compiled the most amazing resources that I have ever come into contact with. All this work done by survivors of severity in daily life-threatening situations, putting their hard work, knowledge, and lived expertise into our intuitive community knowledge base. And from this knowledge base, we are able to share a wide variety of solutions to heretofore thought to be impossible problems, which survivors of severity are solving successfully every single day. The reason that I and others are alive on this planet is because we have figured out that there is a different way to live. Not so wastefully as in the mainstream, and with much greater heartfulness and caring and interconnectivity in community. So of course there has been some amount of begging and screaming, people begging for their lives, not wanting to be abandoned, to be wasted so unnecessarily. And yet that is inherent with the solutions that we have gathered together to share with all who would benefit. You, my dear listener, I assure you, will benefit. Try me. It'll be a fun game, I promise. It's been challenging in all of our environments of trauma to separate the feelings of intensity of that begging and screaming and threat to life from the fact and imminence of real practical solutions that are right here in front of us. We're sitting on them, and we've been. When we speak up about them, though, people who have not been through similar severity, they don't recognize the solutions-oriented conversations. The reason they don't recognize them, the reason that they seem to just lose them suddenly in the conversation, is because they have not had resources that make them feel safe enough to process the trauma of the confusing begging and screaming and all of these threat to life expressions. So where do they get those resources? These people who are affected by their loved ones and community members suddenly going so-called crazy, inexplicably. The resources that they need in order to process and navigate that experience successfully and with caring for members of their community are the resources that we have compiled as part of this intuitive community knowledge base, which I and others consider to be so impressive, because we know firsthand that all of the people who compiled those resources, our intuitive invisibles, have done so while continuously dying. And that has been representative of feats far beyond anything that is really conceived in the mainstream. They don't know that it's possible to live lives like these. We're invisible to them for weird reasons. But in that we're documenting everything, it tells an amazing story. To that end, I hope you will consider making a donation to paypal.me/intuitiveinvisibles to send dollars to us and to me. We will use that support to meet our most pressing, urgent survival needs and advance the production queue pretty much immediately. In the production queue since, I would say April, the end of April 2020, we have interviews with members of our communities. We have materials created with allies who are deeply aligned with the work that we've been doing. We are sharing the stories of people who otherwise are not known about at all, unfortunately and devastatingly mischaracterized every other place we have found, especially in the mainstream. So these survivors of severities and their intuitive stories are being raised and amplified most expertly by survivor-led initiatives and intuitive public media and all our community projects, many and varied. So our production queue goes back to, I think it's April 20th through 23rd or so. I might be incorrect, but you can check. It should say at intuitive.pub/text. There's also intuitive.pub/TV and intuitive.pub/TV/Max. Do me a favor and report back. You can have conversations with me on Telegram, which is my easiest access point in circumstances of severe disability, by navigating to t.me/MaxMoRadio. That's the page connected to my Telegram profile, and it should have an option at the top of the page that prompts you if you'd like to install the Telegram Messenger software. And perhaps what I should have said is t.me/s/MaxMoRadio, which is the public address. The previous one being my messaging profile direct. Please also reach out to me, please, and prolifically, by emailing max@intuitive.pub, which is my email address. All other GLAD contact information you may locate at intuitive.social/hello/Max. I wish I could get these messages to the anchor station, but I'm not quite there yet. If you'd like to listen to the archives there, you may do so by navigating to anchor.fm/MaxMoRadio. Sooner or later, I'll be back. I think I have gotten myself through my most important tasks. I'm scheduled with Carl Kalaman in about a half hour for a Zoom video chat. We were talking about jaguars somewhat when we spoke initially. And so jaguars today are especially present for me, in addition to all the talking I do with Grandma Elizabeth in the realms of spirit. She gave me particular support in not drinking coffee this morning. I almost went for it, and then I said, no, I honor my communications with my grandmother, and we already decided that that was not the thing to do. What a challenge to choose. So, Grandma Elizabeth's birthday in the Mayan Zolkin is 7 Jaguar, and the number 7 in the 13-day Trisena that looks like a stepped pyramid is, among other things, about endings. And in Mayan stories, there are stories about endings and jaguar beings and great feats of courage and strength. Wisdom and mystery. My grandmother was a profound researcher of our family's Welsh indigeneity, to trace back through genealogy as far as can be traced back, and where we can't find any detailed specifics, we can research the history and ancient prehistory of the Welsh people, who they are in their hearts, how their spirit is emergent. It was also, I'm going to go for the word wacky, to realize that there is this research now connecting Welsh cultures through DNA to very similar DNA in the Basque culture. And in fact, I think there was some specific, I don't want to use the wrong words, so I'm scrambling a bit. But the connection to Basque DNA is very interesting, although that still places them on a different part of the planet from the ancient Mayans. But there are people who describe interconnections. I don't understand them well enough to verbalize them. But there is, I don't know what it is. There has been this feeling of a spirit of a connection, in some ways additional to the fact that all us living beings are part of the organism that is this planet. My journey and my family's journey has received so much crucial wisdom from the experiences of my grandma Elizabeth, and how she has been a part of our lives in all of these ways, and how we were a part of hers, and where her spirit is living and material in the world, where we are honoring our living family structures. We're honoring our emergent community resources, how we can help and nourish and care for one another. That is very Mama Jaguar. And simultaneously, through all the trauma that all are experiencing, the sense of endings and what we learn from honoring our contact with and remembrance of death and dying, what meaning we come to have about the destruction of things and about apocalyptic suffering, where death is also a birth process. But we must honor what's happening and never proceed wastefully. There is so much of my grandma Elizabeth and her genealogical research for me in all of that experiencing. Hello all, I'm feeling some things, but I've been broadcasting. I have tremendous severity, but if it goes unstated and I can sustain communicating in pleasant ways, well, who can tell until it's so bad that I just suddenly go crazy. And that's not completely a bad thing. But it's a weird thing to navigate when people cannot see how extensive and disturbing is my physical suffering. Survivors of severity have that in common. More about survivors of severity can be found at intuitive.pub/intersections. Ow, my mouth. intuitive.pub/intersections. Yes. We've also been sharing Kimberly Crenshaw's events through the network, not nearly as much as we wish we were doing, so let's keep on doing that. Intersections of extremity, intersections of invisibility, intersections of compounded suffering, not only for individuals, but for entire communities. Needlessly, wastefully, and something we are all working every single day toward changing. So I'm feeling things. And I'm turning off this Wi-Fi. And I'm feeling things and I'm telling you about it. Ready? Our tool sets work in such wonderful life-saving ways. We are hit with the sudden exhaustion of having realized we completed something. And not just one thing, but many things, intermittently. And then we forget how much we have achieved, and we are taken to the doors of death again. And then, suddenly, remembering or realizing the interconnected components of what we have been constructing, that the tool sets are right here for using to function much more successfully, is super groovy. And it's also a very difficult experience for those of us, most of us, having never accessed any kind of trauma recovery resources or survivor care after, for instance, experiencing human trafficking. Got to get that out of the body. Have you had a good belch today? I think that must be my first of many. When it's hard for us to be able to reflect on what we've been accomplishing, and we don't have feedback from others necessarily, considering all of the intense stressors all are experiencing, it's hard to know where you're at in the process. You know what? It's a little bit like if you've played World of Warcraft or Age of Empires or another game with a little map in the corner that lights up as you explore. Imagine that the map remains dark except for the area immediately around you. And no matter how much you explore it, it goes back to being dark and you can't necessarily remember it. There is not as much of a record of your explorations in your memory as you had gotten used to there being previously, perhaps due to ubiquitous environmental poisoning. So when we're addressing subjects that are in some places met with terrible violence, we need people who care about us and support us to speak up in support of us. Because for many survivors of severity, the only others they hear from are people who, like them, are suffering extremely and continuously, or people who are part of abusive systemic patterns that are programmed to take advantage of vulnerable people in their vicinity. We also most profoundly wish to hear from members of all communities everywhere who believe in the possibility of building safety and belonging into all our communities for survivors of severity. If it was never your intention to exclude those suffering from safety, if you don't know how you ended up in a situation where you have access to privileges that haven't been extended to everybody, and if you are working for the difference in the world that allows all to participate safely with a sense of access to nourishment and building trust in relationships as part of healthy community activities, we would like to know everything about you, in fact, because what you represent is a great light for us when we are striving day after day after day to light up that persistent darkness. And literally, by the way, it repairs our physical neurology, allowing us to retain more ongoing object permanence and accessible memory about what we've been broadcasting, what we've been publishing, what is our public queue of information in the content stream, where have we told our stories, where are our most crucial stories still missing. When you respond in support of us, when you respond to the specific conversations we're having on these public platforms, we all gain amazing skill sets as communities
and as individuals who are striving to recover and heal our physical bodies. It's a big deal. This moment I am broadcasting from Intuitive Social Traffic, a project of Intuitive Public Media, which you can find more about by browsing to intuitive.pub/media. All these projects of Intuitive Community and our Intuitive Public Radio are survivor-led projects that are being compiled as part of our Intuitive Community knowledge base, the efforts of survivors of greatest severity whose lives are on the line every single day. You can support them and you can support me by navigating to intuitive.community/donations and sharing what you have for sharing, whatever that may be. Thank you for listening. I just got done talking with Carl Johan Kalaman about jaguars and energy waves and our biological evolution. It was a lot of fun. There is a lot about jaguar energy in personal, especially traumatic, transformation. Jaguar conversations are also often conversations about magic, death and dying, rebirth, and honoring best what we can honor while we are living. We are producing a variety of private and public materials to help support communities who are experiencing lots of death and dying. We want all to be able to most handily transmute experiences of trauma and destruction into experiences of new emergent wisdom and respect for interconnection.
Achabal, we're then going to go into 12 cat. So cat, the net, the gathering, the harvest, the gathering of the abundance. And the number 12 representing the bundling. So 12 cat is one of those weird combinations where both the number and the nawal kind of have very, very similar properties. Now, cat is certainly the net with which we gather our harvest, with which we gather our abundance. But, you know, if you're going to go and gather your harvest, you have to go with space to put your harvest into the net. If your net's already full, you're never going to gather anything. And so what I also see cat as, because it's like catch and release. I really see cat as a very dynamic nawal, where it's got to continuously search through the net as to what's relevant and what's no longer relevant. And here, combined with the number 12, we're talking about life experience. We're talking about stuff that's happened to you, maybe stuff that you're carrying as well. 12 cat is a fantastic day for a sort out on whatever level, whatever shape or form, that sort out needs to happen. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean going through your net, physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, to see what you want to carry forward in order to bring that harmony into the home, in order to strengthen your backbone, in order to bring harmony to your community as right? Because if you are carrying a burden that you don't need to be carrying anymore. Stuff from the past which, you know, I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that, you know, we just get rid of things because they're not, you know, they're not who we are anymore. But there are certain stuff that you just don't need. It was a great foundation. We're grateful for it. We are, you know, we loved it. It was important to us at that point in time. It helped us get to where we are now, but we also got to let go of it. And so 12 Cat gives us that opportunity to really look through our life experiences and understand which are the burdens, which are holding us back, which we can release, and which we want to keep as we go forward. This doesn't mean you have to throw everything out of your net. It's not like that. It's just saying, kind of like, have a search through and see which life experiences are stifling you, are stopping you from moving forward in the journey that you are now on. Maybe which life experiences are actually causing friction within your home. Maybe which life experiences are causing kind of like a resistance within your community, as it were, to going forward or to that harmony. And so, as I say, once again, we could see this in some ways as being quite an introverted day, for taking some time to go through that and saying, yep, that happened, but I don't need to hold on to it anymore. Because in order to get there, I can't be still attached back down there. From 12 Cat, we finish up this Tresena on 13 Can. And 13 can be, well, a really wild and powerful day. Can is one of the more powerful Nawals, of course, representing power itself, also representing teaching. Can is the Nawal of the teachers. It is those who empower the people around them with wisdom. Can very much relates to wisdom. And with that wisdom, we can empower those around us. That's what we're here to do. How can we bring a society into balance? Empowerment, teaching, sharing our wisdom. So this is a great thing to do on a 13 Can in particular. Now the 13 also representing the spirit world and the ancestors. We can understand that this is a great day for sharing the wisdom that comes from the ancestors in order to empower those around us. And of course from receiving wisdom from the ancestors, from receiving wisdom from spirit, because this will surely strengthen our backbone and help to bring our community into balance. So, that was the Tresena of Ach. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope that it serves you well. And I look forward to seeing you next time for the Tresena of Kamei. Thank you.
There is a great poetry to everything that we are tuning to as we tune ourselves most tunefully. There is a sense that art is emergent in the living energy. This seems to deeply inform and, by its nature, create our physical materials. And of course, we can feel ourselves changing. To most greatly honor that living poetry, we have been engaging in a certain joyful activity that you may find more information about by browsing to intuitive.community/channel/poetry. Please support our efforts and take a little bit of time to participate. it is very healing to dream together and to express ourselves on behalf of accomplishing safety, belonging, and nourishment for one another.